Okay, so I got a couple more problems to talk about. On this one, the first thing you want to do when there's already a third term, if it's not a perfect square trinomial already, is to add that, or in some cases subtract, but move that third term over to the other side. That way we have x squared minus 8x. We're going to put plus blank equals 9 plus blank. Okay, so we want to figure out what does that third term need to be in that perfect square trinomial. So remember that our steps are to take our middle term, which is negative 8. We are going to divide it by 2, which gives us negative 4. And then we're going to square it, which gives us positive 16. So that means our magic number that we want to add to both sides is going to be 16. So now we're ready to factor this perfect square trinomial. And remember, all we have to do is take the middle term and divide it by 2. So that means this factors as x minus 4 squared. And 9 plus 16 is 25. Okay, so now we're going to get rid of that exponent by taking the square root of both sides. Now we can carry down, since square and square roots are opposite operations, we can carry down our x minus 4. And when we take the square root of 25, remember that it has to be both positive and negative 5. So x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. For our final step, we want to split our equation into two parts. So we have x minus 4 equals 5, and x minus 4 equals negative 5. If we add 4 to both sides, to get x by itself in each equation, we're going to get 9 for this one, and we're going to get negative 1 for this one. And sure enough, if you plug them each in place of x into the first equation, you should get 0 on the other side, and that's how you know your answers are right. Okay, so for the second equation, the problem is we start out with a leading coefficient, and in this case, that coefficient is 2. So we have got to get rid of that before we can factor that perfect square trinomial. So if we start by dividing every single thing in that equation by 2, now I have x squared plus 1/2 x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so now I'm ready to try to solve it like I did the last one. So I'm going to start by moving this negative 2 over to the other side. If we add 2 to both sides, we get x squared plus 1/2 x plus blank equals 2 plus blank, whatever that blank is. And remember, we need to figure out what that blank is by taking your middle term. We divide it by 2, and then we square it. So if we divide this by 2, we get 1/4. And if we square that, we get 1/16. So we are adding 1 over 16 to both sides. I know that's not pretty, but that's just how it is. Okay, so now we have x squared plus 1/2 x plus 1/16 equals 2 plus 1/16. So when we factor this trinomial, we take the 1/2 x and we divide it by 2. So that means we have x plus 1/4 squared when we factor it. And that equals, now, 2 plus 1/16. That would be 32 plus 1 would be 33 over 16 as a improper fraction. Now for the last part, we want to get rid of our exponent. So we're going to take the square root of both sides to get rid of that exponent there. That would leave us just with that x plus 1/4 over here. And then remember, after you take the square root, boom, plus or minus for your next step. So you're going to do plus or minus. And 33 is a prime number, so I'm going to leave it as the square root of 33 up top. But 16 is a perfect square, so I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of that, and that's going to give me 4. So now I have x plus 1/4 equals plus or minus square root of 33 over 4. And all I have to do is subtract the 1/4 to the other side of the equation to get x by itself. And I get x equals negative 1/4 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. And I would leave it just like that for my final answer.